Hi viewers and welcome to the channel, and today we're answering a viewer's question about how you would constrain an arc via its length rather than its radius. We're also going to be looking at how to determine the length of an arc using tools readily available on other workbenches or writing your own tool to do that. So I hope you're enjoying the channel, and let's have a look at this technique. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So how do we constrain a arc length? So all we want to do is say the arc length is fixed. How do we constrain that? Because if you think about it, in maths, let's go into the sketcher and actually create an arc in here. So I've started a new document. I'm in the sketcher looking on the XY plane. Hit OK. So we're creating an arc in here. There's a number of features with the arc, number of properties that need to be calculated first or entered first to allow us to fix this length. We can't fix the length on its own because we need a radius and an angle. So this is the reason why there isn't the constraint for arc length, because it requires additional parameter. If you know the arc length, then you have to calculate either the radius using the angle or the angle using the radius. So for that we need to use some kind of formula in there. Now the trouble is that we can't use a formula because we've got two different measurements in there. We've got a degree and we've got a millimeter or inch, so the unit differs. So we have to use a spreadsheet. So I'm going to calculate with this one, I'm going to calculate the radius. So what radius we need if we have a length of an arc, say 150, and an angle, say 90 degrees, I need to know the radius. So the formula you want to be using is the arc length will equal the radius times the angle. So the first things I need to do is lock down the angle. So I need to lock down the angle between these 2 points and the center. So the angle between those two. So we're using geometry, trigonometry to actually solve this issue. So I'm going to use the line tool and just place a line between the first point and the center point, and the center point and this point here. I've got the auto constraints on. So when I roll over, you'll see the coincident constraint on the right hand side of the pointer. So we've locked down these 2 points at the moment. I'm going to press the right mouse button to get the mouse pointer back, and I'm going to select both of these lines and change them to construction geometry. That means they won't affect the sketch when we actually try to pad or pocket it. At the moment this is actually a valid sketch. I'm going to use this icon here, toggle to toolbar or select geometry 2 from construction mode, also available in sketch geometries, and toggle construction geometry. That'll turn that blue. So it's dark blue, meaning it's a non-constrained construction geometry. If it was light blue, that means it's a fully constrained construction geometry. So we've got these 2 lines here. We'll take both of these lines and come up here. We've got these 2 arrows. That means we've got more constraints along this toolbar. We use an angle constraint in there, and we'll change that to 90 degrees. So we constrain down this angle, but you can see that if the radius changes on this length here, obviously the arc length will change as well. So we need to calculate this if this is a set length. We can't do that via formulas. So via the normal formulas, if I double click on here, we've got the angle, we've got a formula added to here. Well, I need to actually find the radius. So let's set a radius. We can either set a length here, which will be the same as setting a radius because it's going from this point to this point, or we can just click on this arc, set the radius in here. So click this function at the end, and well, I need the angle. I haven't referenced that at the moment with a name, so let's just OK that to get the radius in here. If I double click this one here and just type in angle in here, come into the radius, double click it, and use the formula icon on the end. Now we're in the sketch. I don't need to actually reference the sketch, so I don't need to do sketch dot, because we've got constraints in here that will actually be removed. So because if we're actually inside the sketch, we look at the constraints inside the sketch. Dot angle, the one that I've created, then we get a unit mismatch between results and required. So we can't actually use this. Even if we try some trickery like dividing it, times it, etc., we can't actually use that. So I'm going to clear that and hit OK. What I'm going to do is use something called a spreadsheet. So this will sit outside of the sketcher in a separate file, and it will reference the values that we need. To do that, we need a separate workbench. Let's close that and drop this down. Now this comes bundled with FreeCAD as standard, and it's the spreadsheet workbench, and that's used quite a lot. With the spreadsheet workbench, what we can do is build a spreadsheet by clicking on the new spreadsheet icon or spreadsheet, create spreadsheet, and we double click on that spreadsheet and we get a simple spreadsheet come up, and we can create formulas in here. So I'm going to name one of these fields. I'm going to use this as a header. I'm just going to type in here the arc length. So this is the design arc length that we want. So this was going to be 150, I believe. We're not going to put the millimeters on there because that will cause us some issues. So this is the arc length. What I can do is that when I reference this outside of the spreadsheet, I won't actually be referencing this arc length. This will be referenced inside the spreadsheet. I can add aliases to the field, or I can just reference it by the column A2. What I will be referencing though is the arc angle, and that one's going to be 90 degrees. So this is B2. If I go back to my sketch now, we'll just save this. I'm going to hit Control S to save, and I'm going to call this, I've got arc example in there anyway, so I'm going to save that over the top of that. So we've got our spreadsheet and the sketch, or the document which holds the sketch, all saved under the same file. There'll be one file for both of these. So look at the sketch now. Now we've got that arc angle in B2. We can come into this angle here, double click it, and use the formula. If I type in spreadsheet, we get the spreadsheet come up. Dot's already appeared, so if I type in B, and we get a B2 come up there. That's 90 degrees. Okay, that's in there now. The changes that are made in the spreadsheet won't be visible in the sketcher until you come out of it. If you're out of the sketcher, then it'll be visible straight away. So if I come over to the example now and type in, say, 45 degrees, then go back to the sketch. If I close that now, you'll see that when I come back into that sketch, this is now 45 degrees. Okay, close that again. Just come back into this and type in here, double click that cell 90, come out, then that's changed. So if that was the case, we've got the arc angle, we need to determine what the arc radius is. For that we need a formula, so we need to know the length and the angle, which we do, determine the radius. The formula for the length, to calculate the length, is length equals the radius times the angle, like so. I'm just putting this in here for notes so we can see what the formula is. So that means the radius will equal the length divided by the angle. So for these formulas to work, the angle can't be in degrees, it has to be in radians. So we need to convert the angle first. Now we can do that in the whole formula, but I'm going to do it in a separate cell. So this is going to be the arc angle in rads. So I can show you how we can use formulas inside a spreadsheet as well. So calculate from certain fields to another field just by using a formula. This is the same as any spreadsheet. We'll use an equals in here. That will put us into formula mode or calculation mode. Now if I use B2 in here, equals B2, hit enter, we'll get the arc angle come in. Now to convert that to rads, we need to times that by pi divided by 180. like so. So we've got pi divided by 180 in there. In brackets. Come out, that's equals 1.57. So if I change this angle to say 360 degrees, that will equal 6.28. 180. 3.14. So you can see we've converted that to radians now. The number is rounded up to 2 decimal places, which is absolutely fine. So now we've got our radians there and our length. We can calculate the radius. So the radius is also a calculated field. So we're going to use A2 in there, which is the length, divided by D2. And that gives us 47.75. Let's come back to our sketch and plug this in. First of all, we've got this C2 here. We can reference this by C2, or we can use the alias up here. So we can alias this field. Come over to alias and type in an alias in here. So we're going to call this arc radius. Notice the color has changed when I click off. So we click on that, we've got our alias down. This makes it a lot easier to reference it back in our sketch. Come over to the sketch, double click on the sketch, and we want this radius, which comes out here. Double click on that. Use the formula icon on the end, and we can start typing spreadsheet, and then start typing A, and we get the arc radius come up. So click on the arc radius, hit OK. 47.75, hit OK again, and therefore we have the degrees here of the angle between these 2 points and the radius for this length. Let's close that. Now what I'm going to do is come over to something called the Curves Workbench and activate a tool called Geoinfo. We'll go through this in the measuring arc section of this video in a moment. If I click on this curve here, you can see the length is 150. And we go back to our spreadsheet, the arc length is 150 there. So now we can change this angle to something like 90 degrees. Everything gets recalculated. Come back to the arc example and then click on this length here, and it's still showing as 150. And also changing the length, say 100. Arc radius gets recalculated again. Come back to the sample, click on the curve, the length of 100, and everything's changed. So that's a basic spreadsheet in here to actually control that length. We don't need these now, so we can delete these. We can just leave them in there for reference if you so desire. One thing to remember is that with the sketch, if we're going to create a closed sketch, then we may need to leave some of the geometry unconstrained. So let's place, say, a line in here, connect that down here, line across, and we'll connect up to the top. So now we've got a dynamic sketch. You can see they're changing. And say if I wanted to keep this horizontal, so I can put a horizontal constraint in here, that'll keep that horizontal. So when I close that and change the spreadsheet, say 150, arc angle of 80, we can see that's changed there. Kept that horizontal, so this arc length will change. So we've shown how to constrain an arc by its length. Let's have a look at measuring arcs now. So to measure an arc, there is a number of ways. I'm going to create a new document and I'm going to go into the part design. We could use the part, doesn't matter, we just need a sketch in there to start with. I'm going to click on create body and create a sketch. Just place it along the XY plane. Let's bring this out a bit and okay that. So I'm going to place an arc along here and create a solid body. And coming up like so. And we'll create another one inside there as well. And I'm just going to connect up these 2 points. So using a line to connect these up to close the sketch. So I've got the auto constraints on. You can see there. And I'm just constraining to those with coincident constraints just to close this arc. So I've got a closed sketch there. Hit close. Because I've got a closed sketch, I can come into the model, I can select the sketch, it's gone green, and I can pad that. I'm just going to give it 10mm, that's fine. So to measure, say, this arc here, there is a number of ways of doing this. We can use a bit of Python script to do it. So I come up to View, Panels, and we want the Python console. And the command that we want in here is this one here. Now that sounds quite a long command to actually put in there. So I'm going to add that to this video's comment so you can use that in there. At the moment, if there's nothing selected, if I hit enter, you can see it's come up list index out of range. That's because I haven't selected one of these edges. If I select that edge and use the command again, pressing the up arrow to bring back some of the latest commands, it's got the command in here, hit enter, you can see it's coming up 106.611. So it's taken the length of the selected element. So what we're doing is looking at the GUI, we're looking at the selection, and we're getting the selected element in there. And we're getting the sub-objects of there, the first sub-object, which is what I've selected there, and dot length. Now we can place this on a button if we so desire, and add that to our toolbar. So what we'll do is save it as a macro. Go into macro, macros, and I'm going to create a new macro, call this arc length, and just paste that in there, and we'll save it. So now each time we run this, whichever is selected, so I've got the edge selected there, you see it in green, macro, execute macro, you can see that it hasn't actually shown anything on screen. So we need to change this slightly. If I type in here FreeCAD .console .print message, and put a bracket around here, like so. Now when I run this, you can see down the bottom it's coming up 106.61123. So that come up there, but if we look at our view, panels, report view, we can see it's coming up in the report view as well. What I'm going to do is place this on a button now. So we're in the part design at the moment. I've got the macro open. If I come up to tools and customize, then we can get to our buttons. What I'm going to do is come up to macros, and we've got already the macro selected in there, so it's already pulled through. I'm going to give it some kind of text, so I'm just going to place arc length in here. And this will be shown on the button tooltip. So when you roll over it, status text is what happens when it's shown down the bottom, and we can give it a pix map as well. So this is just an image. We can select on that, and we can select an image from here. So whatever image you want, you can include your own if you so desire. And I'm just going to pick an image from here. So I'm just going to pick this one for the time being. So got that image there. Now click add, and that adds it to our custom macros. But we've got to get this onto a toolbar now. Come over to toolbars. We're in the part design at the moment, so that's opened up there. And these are all the commands that have come in on that part design. So we can drop this down, and we can come down to macro. These are all the macro parts, so we don't want this. That's where it gets a bit confusing because we've got macro and macros. We've got the arc length there. But before we press the right arrow to add this in, we need to add a new toolbar in here. And we can call this what we want. I'm just going to call it macros. And then we can click on the arc length and push this into our toolbar. You can see it's popped up at the top here. Hit close. Now we've got the macro on here. So I can close this arc length macro, and we can test it by clicking on the bottom one, pressing our little icon, and you can see it's come up down here. It's actually added it onto the report view. So it's added it onto our last command. But if I click on it, you can see down the bottom left in the status bar, it's got 91.66. If we wanted to change this so it's not added onto this line of text here, what we can do is come back into the macro, which is closed at the moment. So I can go macros, macros, click on the arc length once and edit it. Come into our macro. I'm just going to hit enter to push it down the line and just add above here FreeCAD.console.print message, and in brackets I'm going to add a new line character. So in double quotes or single quotes, /n, close single quotes, and close the bracket. Go macro, execute macro. You can see that's placed it on the new line, and that's because we've got that selected. If we didn't have anything selected, macro, execute macro, then we get an error there. So macro is already safe because we run it. Now if I come back to the part design, I've got this icon here for the arc length. I can click on any one of these and click on that, and we get the arc length. And we'll try it on the end as well, and we get the end length, so we're actually pulling out the length of any element we've selected, like so. This doesn't actually work in the sketcher, so we get some odd results when we actually use this in the sketcher. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is coming into the curves workbench. If you haven't got this installed, then you can go up to Tools, Add-on Manager, and in here you find the curves workbench. Scroll down. I've already got it there installed, not the curve shape, the curves. And there's something called the Geoinfo. If I click on that, that will enable that info. And anything I selected, you'll see in the background, we get the information. So you can see how long these links are. So 5.39. If we look back, this is basically using the same code. It's just rounding up the values as what I've used here. But we've got a bit more information here. So there's more code in the background that's running that. So that's Curves Workbench. Again, this doesn't work in the sketcher. If you click on one and use it, and you see the length 5.39 there, so that's wrong, that's selecting there. So there is a small bug with this one that doesn't actually work. And this happens with the macro as well. If you're inside the sketcher, you can't get that length of the arc. So as long as you're outside the sketcher, then those will work. So I hope you found that useful, even if you're just learning how to use the spreadsheet and formulas, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.